The profit first accounting system is not an accounting system, it's a mindset shift.
What is up, champions? And welcome to another episode of Champion Reads, where we talk about best-selling books and their best principles to help you out with your best life. I am your co-host, Willie Blake, and I'm joined with the other co-host, Mr. Ian Sturmer. And today we're jumping into the second episode of Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Last week we went over there a little bit of what he talks about in the beginning and talked at the general overview of what it means to have a profit and how to keep a profit in your business. And I'm excited for today because today we're going to talk more about what he brings into as the profit formula, as well as some other things that we were talking about in the back room that you'll just have to wait and see as you listen to this episode. So as we jump into it, the profit formula that Mike Michalowicz puts out. He puts it in the context of if you were to get a list of items, the thing that you would remember is usually like the first two or three you'd remember. And so a lot of times when it comes to business, when I think of accounting and finances, we put it in the frame of revenue. I don't know, maybe this side. Revenue subtract expenses equals profit, right? That just makes sense. The money that comes in, subtract the money that's going out equals the profit. How much is left? How much the business is making, whether it's a net gain or a net loss. Mike, on the other hand, tells us to let's rearrange this a little bit, because shouldn't a business be profitable all of the time? He does it to where it's revenue minus profit equals expenses. So putting profit over your expenses. There's plenty of examples with like The Richest Man in Babylon, there's paying yourself first, and some other stuff. But before I give away all the secrets to the trade, I'm going to turn it over to Ian as we start a good conversation on this.
Yeah, thanks. Again, the concept that you should make money, if you're an entrepreneur, the idea that you should have a profit should not be a new idea to you. We're in this, whatever business you're in it to make some money. Yes, we're in it to change the world and help people out and all those things. But if we're not making some money, we can't do any of those things. So the idea that we should make sure we get some money out of it, it's common sense. And like you said, it's backed up by researchers and authors and entrepreneurs and accountants and millionaires going back probably thousands of years, that you need to earn some money. And he just kind of puts, he said in the beginning, it's not an accounting system, it's a mindset shift. It's changing the way you look at things. Instead of saying, after I do everything, if there's something left over, I can have it. Well, no, let's take our piece first. And then let's make the rest of it fit. And really, that's how life works. We expand to fit what we need. And he talks about this in the book, said that demand, actually I take it back, that was a different book I just read. I forget the reference on it. Demand expands and contracts to fit supply. And that's a little bit different thought than we usually think with supply and demand. If supply goes up, demand goes down, or how they all fit together. But the fact is, if there's suddenly a whole bunch of something, people go out and get it. That works the same with our expenses and with our finances. If we have a whole bunch of money, we spend it. If we don't have much money, we don't spend it. And he uses a great analogy of a toothpaste in here, we've all gotten a new tube of toothpaste, and we just put a big old glob on our toothbrush. And then we look off to the side and the piece falls down into the sink, and you just take a tissue, wipe it up, throw it away, and put another glob, and you don't even care. But you get to the end of that toothpaste tube where you're working to get that little bit out, and you put like, how much do I really need on there? I'm not going to put a molecule more than necessary so this thing will last. And if that falls off the toothpaste, I mean, your whole day is ruined if it falls off the toothbrush, because you just wasted, it's one day sooner now you have to go out and buy that toothpaste tube because it's so annoying. Same thing happens with our finances, whether it's personal or business. If you get a whole bunch of money, you go out and you spend more money. You don't worry about spending it. When you're on a really tight budget, you're really careful. And that's the way our business should run. We can be more careful. We can spend less in our business, the same as we can spend less in our lives. I don't think I've worked with people in their finances, both in business-wise and personal-wise. I've never talked to somebody who could not have spent a little bit less in areas of their life without really affecting the quality of their life.
Yeah.
They have money, so they think they can spend. I'm rambling here, but I'll turn it back to you after a little old joke that I've heard. There's a little cartoon strip, and there's a person holding a checkbook. Those of you old enough to remember checkbooks. It says, "How can I be out of money? I still have checks left." That idea, if you think it's there, you're going to spend it. And that's what this mindset shift, we may have to edit out that little mispronunciation there. Mindset. Yeah.
We don't edit out. We just keep going.
That's teaching us that we will live with less without much pain if that's what we believe we have. And taking the profit out first is going to teach us that this is what we have to work with. This is what we have to budget with. And that's kind of the overview of what this profit first formula is. Your revenue minus your profit equals what you have to spend, equals your expenses. And it's a brilliant way of doing it because it forces us to look at it in a different way, in a way that's going to make us happier and going to naturally help us to cut wasteful expenses without even necessarily noticing it. So I'm going to turn it back to you. I pontificated a little longer than I meant to there.
We love it. We love it. You're right on the money. Think of this, listeners.
Nice money pun there. Yes.
Yeah. If you had $100 and you lived off $100, is it not possible to then put $1 somewhere else and try to live off $99? Not really, because you just got to change one thing. And that's the whole premise of this. It's taking 1% in the beginning, moving that to, let's say, a profit account or a place that you don't really touch because that's for, the profit side. It's that we are more able than we think that we are. So many times we get into the rut and the habits and everything that's going in our life to where we say we can't handle anymore. There is so much going on that there's no way we can handle anything else. But the reality of it is you can. Because if something else gets introduced into your life, something naturally is going to be pushed out. And if you want to get rid of something and you start going away from it, naturally something is going to come back in. So if you're living with $100 and take one of those dollars and put it somewhere else, by laws, you are going to adjust your life to be able to fit $99 instead of the $100. And then if you do that over and over and over again, then you might have enough money taking those $1 out for a Big Mac in a year's time, right? Because we all know, don't want to say the business on air, but a business that has a Big Mac, maybe it will cost $12 in a year's time. Who knows?
It might.
Yeah, it just might. So whatever it is that you have in your life, you can change it. You can take on more, but it's not the mindset of you taking on more and that your plate gets fuller. It's more of you are taking on something good and taking off something bad. Or if everything on your plate's good, it's taking off good and putting on something better. So I just love the concept of like, if you have $100 and you're living on it, try $99. And you will be surprised that every single time you'll be able to make it work.
Yeah, love that. And I'm going to back up and explain a little bit of what you said there from the book. So he recommends you take 1% of your profit, or 1% of your revenue, not your profit, 1% of your revenue, and put it in a different account. Put it in a profit account, which is separate from everything else, and you don't touch that. Because like you said, if your business is running on $100 a month, I can pretty much guarantee you can run it on $99 a month. It's not that big of a thing. And it's a mindset shift. And by putting it in a different account, okay, I've got to correct you again here, Willie. Sorry.
Cool.
That money is not to buy a Big Mac with.
That is true. That is true.
The idea of putting it into that separate account is it's out of your sight. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here, Willie. Be honest with these. Sure. When's the last time that you dipped into your 401k to buy groceries at Walmart?
0%.
Okay. When's the last time you cashed in a savings bonds because you wanted to go out and see a movie?
I haven't.
Yeah, right. We don't do those things. Those are set aside for the purpose, and we know in our mind you don't touch those unless it's an emergency or the appropriate time that you plan for comes up. Those are not in our budget. My grocery budget does not have a line of my 401k taking out. When I retire, it might, but now it doesn't. There is no line in my impulse buys at Walmart for my savings bonds or my money market account. Those are not my expenses. Those are not things that I am using money for on a daily basis in my work, in my business, in my home. They are completely separate. And that's what this profit first thing is. Take that profit out first, set it aside, and live on the rest, just like you do with your 401k. I don't think anyone budgets their monthly budget and has a line for how much they contribute to 401k. No, you budget your home based on your take-home pay, not your gross pay, on your net. And if there's another, your health insurance comes out of your paycheck and that increases at the beginning of the year, you adjust your expenses according to that. That's the same thing with this profit idea. Remove it first. Get it out of your wallet, out of your fingers, out of your hands. Take it away from the equation of what you're doing. Make it an expense. And he goes through a system of accounting that we'll probably go into in a later podcast just a little bit when we can get some graphics to help out with that. But he says, put aside a section for your profit, the same as you put aside a section for your taxes you're going to have to pay. The same as, most of us have a retirement account. We put a certain amount into retirement or a certain amount into savings, or if we want to go on a vacation, we put a certain amount aside, or not to be sexist for the guys here, when we're ready to buy a new TV, we start siphoning off just a little bit of our money off to the side so we can tell the wives, oh, look, I found this extra couple $100. Let's go buy that TV now. We can siphon those little bits aside. And he says, start out with 1%. Is that going to change the world? No. It's going to change your life? No. Is it going to suddenly make your business have millions of dollars in your pocket? Suddenly, no. But that concept. If you can do 1%, well, maybe 2% works for you, maybe 3, maybe 10, maybe 15. There's no correct number for everybody. But put it out of your mind. That's the opposite of goal setting, where you want to put it in the front of your mind.
Yeah.
Money you don't want to spend, put it out of your mind. It's really mindset. That's the key to it. The accounting system is to help us get the correct mindsets. And if you watch the podcast, you know what mindset is.
Yeah, I'm actually going to ask you a question. A time ago,
payback.
You mentioned, payback. You mentioned a while ago that when it comes to, let's step away from finances and just talk about that principle of setting stuff aside and not, let's say, indulge. You said that in order for individuals who are around retirement age or like such, that to maintain the weight that they have, all they have to do is cut 100 calories. Is that right?
Right. I read that at one point. I'm not going to stand by the exact factual side, but I like the concept that a small change can do that.
Yeah. Can you abbreviate more on that? Because it's not finances, but it's the principle of it. It's such a small amount that each day we can set aside or not touch that actually keeps us either maintained where we're at or better afterwards.
Right. Again, this is something I read a long time ago, so don't hold me to exact numbers here, but it said that basically as you get older, and it was probably 40 or 50 years old, it said, if you were able to cut 100 calories out of your diet, out of your lifestyle a day, that allows you to basically maintain your weight on some averages. And that 100 calories, I remember radio was saying it's not getting pepperoni and some toppings on your pizza. It's taking the stairs a couple of times a day instead of taking the elevator for a couple of flights. It's a few minutes of walking. 100 calories is a very small thing, and most of us could, if we work in an office building, you could take 2 flights of stairs, even if you take the elevator the rest of the way, without changing your lifestyle. You could order a pizza with fewer toppings. You could not get cheese on your sub, and you would cut out those 100 calories. You could have a slightly smaller ice cream than you had before. Minor portion controls, things that you honestly would never even notice in your life, but they make up enough difference to help you maintain where you're at. And if you did, of course, slightly more, you would do more than that. Tiny changes make huge effects. If you don't believe that, please go back to our podcast on the book Atomic Habits, because that goes into that whole idea, making one little change. I was just looking over and picked up the book I haven't read yet, Make Your Bed, by the Admiral, who says, if you make your bed first thing in the morning, that one little change sets you up for the rest of the day. Same thing with money. Putting that 1% aside, it teaches us that we are not, I don't want to say not, that we are not in a prison that forces us to spend 100% of everything. We don't have to have 100% of our money tied up in running a business. And Mike mentions this in the book a couple of times, that entrepreneurs tend to think they are supposed to suffer. They're supposed to be in pain. Entrepreneurship is supposed to hurt. If you are not, spare time is the time you're supposed to be putting into your business again. Spare money is what you're supposed to reinvest in your business. I said, no, change that mindset. Keep some of what you're earning. Enjoy some time. I answered that question way longer than you probably wanted me to, and I just took it and ran with it. So I'm going to go back to you, and a small change in your diet can have a huge effect on your weight. A small change in your finances can have a huge effect on the outcome.
And I'd also add that a small change in your relationship can make or break a marriage, per se. I was talking with my wife. So right now I'm at our old house. We're in the process of moving. And so I'm at our old house with one of my kids, and my wife is at our new house with two other of our kids. We've been apart for about 2 weeks now, and I'll awesomely get to see her tomorrow. But being apart made us both realize that we actually like each other, which is not like we didn't know didn't like each other before.
It's a good thing to know, though.
It's a very good thing to know. But but having that separation apart, it's like, am I giving my wife the leftovers of the time that I have? We talked about the portion of with finances. Am I spending 100% and not putting anything towards profit? Or with our health, does 100 calories actually matter when it comes to maintaining weight? Yeah, that little bit does. And so when it comes to our relationship, at least mine, I've realized that I'm not going to give my wife the extra time, the leftover time. I'm going to actually plan intentional time to then put into our marriage and relationship. That's what the profit formula goes into, and that principle, whether it's relationships, whether it's our being social, whether that's our weight, and whether that's our finances. We focus on the profit first and make time for that before we do the expenses, which usually takes all of our time. And with that, I want to welcome to the stage our wonderful co-founder, our wonderful founder of Champion Circle, John Kovacs Jr. John, with everything that you just jumped in on, I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts about the profit formula of when you have your revenue, subtract profit instead of expenses, and then that equals your expenses. So focusing on that profit first.
Yeah, this is my second time reading this book, and what I love about Profit First is the intentionality behind planning, right? And when it comes to receiving revenue, to take the portion of what is profit, right? And you calculate that, and then you put it somewhere. You do something with it. You have a plan for it. I can bet that 99% of Americans, as well as most people in this world, when they receive money, they have a plan for the overall majority of that lump that comes in, but they don't have intentions behind doing good with it, or doing the right things with it, or paying themselves first, going back to the richest man in Babylon and all those foundational principles that we've talked about on this show. But I love the intentionality behind it, and it just reminds me of how important it is to make a plan and have intentions behind it. Willie, you were just talking about, rather than doing what could be perceived as, saving some time, you're going to go ahead and plan ahead an awesome date with your wife, or do something really, really powerful. And that goes a long way, I think. And so just like relationships with people, relationships with the money that we have, or the money that we earn, is exactly what we need to be doing to have those positive experiences in those moments. So it's just it's an incredible formula. It's an awesome reminder. In a way, this book reminds me of the book The One Thing, because it gives you that principle of purpose behind every dollar. And I think that that's just an important reminder, and I'm grateful for the methodology.
Yeah, love that. And I love this analogy of a relationship, because it's so applicable to the idea of little things and a small change. And if anyone is out there is in a relationship, tell your significant other, I love you, one more time in the day, and see how much that changes your life. Put it in the comments, because I'm honestly curious how that would work. But there was probably decades ago now, there was a series of commercials, and they were, the tagline was, it's little things, and it was, sorry, as I go through this, there was a great one where there's a husband and wife sitting down, traditional marriage, and the husband says, well, what did you do today? He goes, well, I went to the store, I bought the groceries, I came home, I made some lasagna, and I made a chocolate cake afterwards. I dented the car, I did the laundry. He goes, you dented the car? He goes, yeah, well, that's why the chocolate cake. And said, oh, and then the tagline is marriage is not a big thing. It's a lot of little things. And that's what, marriage is, relationships, life, and our businesses are not a big thing. They're a lot of little things. And it doesn't take big changes to affect those little things. And I'm going to finish with one more little example there back on the business side. I don't think anyone does their budget and says, it's going to cost me $327 this year for my advertising. They say, I'm going to spend $400 on advertising this year. Then they go out and find something that costs $400 for their advertising. Now, your rent might be fixed, some of those things, but most of these expenses, you set your amount first, and then you go find something to fit that dollar amount, rather than picking what you want first and then having to pay for it for these variable expenses. So taking 1% of your revenue first is not going to change your advertising. It's just going to mean you're going to spend $399 on your advertising instead of $400. Okay, that was bad math. But you know what I mean. You're going to spend 1% less on that. So it's the little things. It's not huge changes. It's atomic habits. It's the one thing. It's principles of richest man in Babylon. Take that little bit out first.
And that's what it comes down to. And as we wrap up this wonderful episode that we've been talking about and share our final thoughts, it comes to me that it's not just when I read this book, I wasn't thinking about my relationship with my wife. I wasn't thinking about my health. I was thinking about creating that profit account, creating the other accounts. I was thinking about money. But as we've gone into this principle, it's so powerful about the power of small things. And when we tap into the power of small things, taking small little actions, I love to use the 2% rule, which is 2% action every single day to get to the goal that you're looking for. Taking 2% every single day will get you there. It's just about the consistency of it. So when it comes to our relationships, small little consistencies will make it better. When it comes to our health, not eating the cake, but going towards the yogurt or maybe an apple consistently every day is going to make the difference. When it comes to our money, putting aside and focusing on paying ourselves first, putting the profit in there, just 1%. Will not right now feel like a big difference, but over time, consistently will make it. So small things every single day to help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I too drink 2% milk, and it's a daily habit of being better, right? And I love that principle. Whether it's 1 or 2% better, being so cognizant and aware of the plans and intentions behind everything you do is just one small way of becoming that person you think you are. It just takes time, right? And those small habits, those small efforts become part of the big efforts. And a lot of people want immediate fixes, instant gratification and changes and transformations. But the truth is it takes time. When I lost a loved one and went through some therapy for it, it wasn't a one session Band-Aid ripped off. Okay, I did it. I figured out where my heart was and where my brain was. It was an unpacking. It was definitely a step-by-step process. And not that our listeners need to go through therapy, but everything we do has a step-by-step process. And that step-by-step process isn't necessarily written in the book of life. It's something that you need to do with intention every single day, 1 or 2% better each day. And being intentional about it will change your life. You'll see a huge difference. It just adds up. After a couple days, you'll see a difference. After a couple hundred days, you'll see many differences. And last, I'll just share, like, you've seen those TikToks, those reels where people will come in and they'll be like, 1 day after watching Yellowstone, and then they'll come in the next and they'll be like 2 days after watching Yellowstone, and they're a little slightly dressed up. 3 days after watching Yellowstone, and they start sounding like the characters, right? It's purely comical, but it's there to make fun of and show you like how watching something over and over again can change you and change your mindset. Well, the same thing happens. Just like you watch your TV shows, you can also profit first.
Yeah, love that. And there's a similar one with playing Pokemon Go. 1 day after starting Pokemon Go, and by the end of the year, most people have lost 15 to 20 pounds from the walking that they do with it. So, so that is one. I have to point out, I tried that 2% milk thing. I was 2% milk and then 98% chocolate syrup, and I did not lose weight at all. So I'm not sure what's going on with that diet. But back to the principle here. There's a philosophy or school of philosophy called natural law. And I think that there are natural laws governing the universe. And that goes down to a small change compounds to bigger changes and bigger changes and bigger changes. And this really comes down to learning to make a shift in your mindset. How you look at your money is going to affect how you spend it. Realizing that you're not tied to those pennies that you have in revenue. You know, if any of us walked into the grocery store to buy our groceries and we had, $21 bills in our hand, and one of them slipped out and flew away and we couldn't get it, we would go to the grocery store and we would buy what we need with $19. It would just happen because that is now what we are basing our world on, is $19 instead of $20. That small change, you live with that, you adjust to it. And that's the secret of this book is, let's make a small change, or make a big change in our mindset by making a small change in our accounting that will facilitate that mindset change. And I'm excited to get into some of the details and examples of what people have done with this. And I'm excited to get started in my own side. I need to put my money where my mouth is and get these accounts and things set up as well. We were actually discussing that in the green room today before the meeting, that, okay, we need to do this so we can tell people it works.
Yeah. Action, 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 right? Listeners, thank you for joining us. Champions, you are awesome. And that wraps up this episode. If you found inspiration in it, go ahead and subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, as well as go to our website, mychampionscircle.com. There we go. To where you'll find the link to our socials, link to our podcast, and everything else going in the Champion Circle universe. Till next time, champions, continue to be awesome. Continue to be the champion in your life. And always remember that it's just the small steps that get you the results that you want. We'll see you on the next episode of Champion Reads.